How you doing, sir?
Said he might make it, but he might not.
Everything okay? Oh, I tell you what, I mean, anything below 65 is cold for me. And the temperature is pretty good with the wind.
I know, it's not, yeah, it's pretty,
I've seen Chris. I think
Beautiful
he's
day.
yeah.
Watch Tina.
No, it's not a new Georgia flag.
That's where I was too,
The old one.
and it was warmer than we thought, so.
Why do we have an old Georgia flag in the courthouse? Ask them. Just turn around there and ask them.
But, yes, sir.
That's all right.
Ethan added
Start doing it.
that, so that's gonna be in the regular meeting. So that's, so we got the four in the open meeting, and we can, add it to the regular meeting to discuss it. We can talk about it. Remind us, after the second session. Okay?
I'd like to call this meeting of Whitfield County, Barnell, Tunnel Hill Planning and Zoning meeting to order for April 24th. Just hand it over to Chairman Litterdale.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. First order of business, declare we do have a quorum. Mr. Shiflett is away on personal business tonight. Second item is to review the minutes from the previous meeting. Anybody have any additions, deletions, modifications?
Motion to approve.
Second.
David motions approves. Mr. President, seconds. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, the ayes have it. Tonight, we do have 4 items to discuss in the public hearing. 2 are in the county, and the second 2 are in the city. Before we get to that, Mr. Ethan Calhoun will review the processes and requirements for those who would like to speak tonight, either for or against. Ethan?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Ladies and gentlemen, for the meeting tonight, you may have noticed out front as you came in, we have a table set up, and on that table, we have our agendas. Of course, the chairman will work through each item on the agenda. I just want to do a very quick summary of the procedure for every public hearing tonight. The purpose of this meeting is to hold a public hearing and hear comments for and against each rezoning item. So the chairman will open up the item on the agenda for a hearing. Staff will come forward, that'll be myself. We will give a recommendation, answer questions. Then the chairman will ask for the petitioner, that is the person who is requesting to rezone the property, to come forward to the podium, answer any questions the planning commission or the board of commissioners may have. And once the petitioner has completed their question and answer, the chairman will ask if anyone would like to come forward who'd like to speak in favor in addition to the petitioner. Once all comments for that rezoning have been heard, the chairman will ask if anyone here tonight is here to speak in opposition or against any of the items on the agenda. At that point, if you are here tonight to speak in opposition to any item on the agenda, out front we have opposition forms. It's by state law, those have to be signed as released. And please sign and clearly print your name on those if you plan to oppose any particular rezoning tonight. And also notate on there which item that you plan to oppose, so that we can make sure we get your comments and your name correct in the minutes in the record. And once opposition remarks have been heard, the chairman will give an opportunity to the petitioner to rebuttal to address any issues that were raised in opposition. If no new evidence is presented in the petitioner's rebuttal, the chairman will close that public hearing, move to the next item, and again, the same process, same procedure will take place for every item on the agenda. Once all the hearings have been heard, we'll move into the regular portion of the meeting, and the planning commission will deliberate a recommendation that will be sent forward to the City of Dalton Mayor and Council and the Whitfield County Board of Commissioners for final action. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Ethan. The first item we'd like to hear is a request from Casey Perry to rezone from low-density, single-family residential R2 to rural residential R5, attractive land, parcel 12-016-12-008. It is in the county. Ethan?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Our first item tonight is a rezoning from R2 to R5, as you mentioned, and the purpose of this rezoning is because the current property, subject property, is just a little over half an acre on Dantzler Circle, and previously this property contained a manufactured home. And now the property is vacant. It's been vacant now for some time. And of course, what that means is the previous manufactured home that was on this property would have been non-conforming. Since it's been removed, that non-conforming status has lapsed. Therefore, the only way to place a manufactured home on the subject property would be to rezone, in this case to R5, based on this area. And that would create the opportunity to replace the former manufactured home with a newer manufactured home on this property. So if we take a quick look at zoning in this area, we do see that, of course, there is R2 throughout this area, including the subject property. We also see some general commercial, some island commercial zoning. We also see the R5 zone district very nearby, just across the street. Take a look at development in this area from the aerial perspective. You can see very residential. You can see the commercial there to the south. But what we see for the most part here, small to medium lot size residential single family. And we do see several manufactured homes in this area, not counting the one that was formerly on the subject property, but there are at least 3 manufactured homes in the immediate vicinity of the subject property. We can see that there, so you can see some of those rooftops where we have some very nearby manufactured homes. So in looking at this area and the character of it and the zoning, this rezoning would not introduce a zone district to this location that is unlike what's already established in this area. And when we look at existing development, this proposal to place a manufactured home on the subject property is not out of alignment with what already exists in multiple numbers in the immediate neighborhood. Looking at the future development map, rural residential, in terms of changing from R2 to R5, of course, this could permit a higher density, but given the limited size of the subject property at this location, facing the setbacks of a corner lot and those types of things, we don't see this as a property that we have to be concerned for massive density increase or anything like that of any notable size. So when we look at comprehensive plan, existing character, what this would change as far as that goes for the future, we don't see any conflict with the comprehensive plan. The recommendation for this rezoning is to approve. I'm happy to answer any questions.
In that picture, was there not a manufactured home in that picture from the satellite?
Yeah, it's our aerial photographs are not always.
I thought we redid those a couple years ago. But it's not there now.
Well, it could be a couple years. Yeah, it was there a couple years ago.
All right, thank you, Ethan.
Thank you.
Casey Perry? You just state your name and address for the record and any comments you have.
It's Casey Perry, 559 Danceville Circle, Dalton, Georgia, 30721.
Okay.
Sorry.
Do you have any comments?
No,
I mean, is that pretty straightforward?
it's pretty straightforward. I'm gonna put a new trailer in there for me and my kids.
Okay. It's going to be single or double wide?
Single,
Okay.
2-bedroom, 2-bath. That's about it.
I'm looking at, checking any questions down there? No, no questions here. All right, thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
Anybody else would like to speak in favor? Anybody would like to speak in opposition? Excellent. And we can move on to the next request. Is to hear a request from Gary Whaley to rezone from GA, General Agricultural, to Rural Residential R5, tract of land 5.29 acres at 3767 Mount Pleasant Road. Ethan?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We can see this rezoning to change from GA to R5.
And this was prompted based on the fact that the subject property has been developed with the manufactured home, so single-family detached dwelling, now for some time. And their request is in order to divide off a small portion of this property in order for an immediate family member to build a new single-family detached dwelling on this property. And in order to do that, they essentially could already locate a second home on this property. In general agriculture, you can have two single-family detached dwellings on a single tract of land, and that could occur here. The change and the reason this is being requested for rezoning is that they want to be able to deed off that portion of the property to that family member so they'll own their portion of the property. So in order to do that, they would need to rezone from GA because they do not have enough land to divide for general agriculture, and that they only have 5.29 acres. They would need at least 10 acres to divide a general agriculture tract. This subdivision can take place through family exempt subdivision, which would allow them to divide off this portion of property without having to go through the major or the formal subdivision process. So they'll have that ability if the rezoning is approved. But when we look at the area in terms of zoning, what exists there now, we'll see the subject property zone general agriculture, but we see to the north an R5 district, we see to the east multiple R5 properties, and we see to the south numerous R5 properties as well. So this property is both adjacent to and nearby a well-established R5 area. And in terms of changing density and so forth on the subject property, the ability to further divide this property, even if rezoned, one additional dwelling is all that's going to be essentially possible likely on this property ever in the future. So you can already build an additional home on this property as it stands, so it's not going to change any kind of functional character of this area in terms of the built environment. Looking at the comprehensive plan, future development map, we see rural agricultural reserve in this area, and the primary goal for rural agricultural reserve is to protect the integrity of the rural and agricultural areas of the county. Of course, general agriculture is the best zone district for this category. However, again, in terms of density and in terms of changing and being, changing the intent of the comprehensive plan or being in conflict, because this property is zoned general agriculture at this size, it can support a second dwelling. So in terms of what you could do with this property, rezoning it to R5 is not going to change the character of the area or the property itself or what could be done there. It'll simply allow that second dwelling to be able to be divided from the subject property. So the staff recommendation is to approve. Happy to answer any questions.
None? Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Whaley?
How are y'all doing?
Good. State your name and address, please.
Gary Whaley, 177 Mulligan Drive, Cohutta, Georgia, 30710.
Okay. Any comments?
No comments, he done a good job.
Okay. Questions? Guess not. That's it. Thank you. Anybody else would like to speak in favor? Anybody like to speak in opposition? Excellent. We can move on to the next request. Commissioners? Okay. Next request is a request from Marty Lane Pratt to rezone from R3 to R5, a tract of land, 0.25 acres at 1425 Jones Street in the city of Dalton. Ethan?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This rezoning to go from R3, medium-density residential, to R5, rural residential, was done or was requested in order to remove the current manufactured home on the subject property. This manufactured home has existed on the subject property for quite some time now, and this request to R5 would be to remove the existing manufactured home and replace it with a duplex dwelling. And the change here would be to go from single-family detached residential with the opportunity to move into multifamily attached residential. Granted, the R5 zone district, the maximum, most intensive land use that can occur in the R5 zone district is a duplex. So not a quadplex or triplex or apartment, maximum density of a duplex. And the subject property is not large enough to divide, to create additional lots. It would be a single tract of land with a single duplex. Looking at this area in terms of zoning, we do see that it is within this larger R3 zone district. And we do not see any other adjacent zone districts around the subject property, but we do see very nearby to the south where we have higher density, and it sort of transitions as you move north into lower density. As we take a look, there's also some multifamily just south of the subject property in that neighborhood commercial district. And we look to the north of the subject property, we can see the church there, so there is some non-residential development in this area. Of course, the manufactured home on the subject property itself is in non-conforming status, which means it's not permitted. You can't have a manufactured home in the R3 zone district. So they can't, once this home would be removed, you couldn't replace it with a manufactured home. You have to build, in this case, in R3, a site-built dwelling. So this request would be to go to a duplex. So we looked at lot density in this area, and of course the adjacent development, what impact could this have on the adjacent properties. Based on a manufactured home, the condition that it's in an aging state. We looked at a couple of factors, one being that the minimum square footage in R3 is 1,000 square feet. And this zone district for R3 is intended for the smaller lots, roughly 1,000, 1,200 square foot, small single-family detached dwellings. And so what we looked at also was the comprehensive plan and the established character of the area, again, with the density that's there and the fact that we've got a non-conforming property. So, in other words, the belief is such that from staff standpoint, that if the aging manufactured home could be replaced with a new dwelling, in this case a duplex, that with certain conditions in place, that this would be an improvement to the property without any hardship being placed on any adjacent properties. And if I flip over here to look, the staff recommendation is to approve this rezoning only if we include there to prohibit future manufactured homes on the subject property and make sure and maintain a site-built environment for this area. And also to require the proposed duplex to meet a minimum dwelling unit area of 1,000 square feet per dwelling unit, which would be the exact same square footage, minimum square footage that you'd be required to build a single-family dwelling. That's the staff recommendation. Happy to answer any questions.
Is it currently occupied, the mobile home?
I believe so. I believe so. It certainly appears to be.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Marty Lane Pratt.
I have done.
No. Your name and address, please.
Marty Lane Pratt, 1425 Jones Street.
Okay. So you reside there?
Yes, sir.
So it is currently occupied then?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Questions? You have a problem with the recommendation that be at least 1,000 square feet?
No, sir.
Are you planning on living in the duplex?
Yes, sir.
One half of it?
Yes, sir.
Okay, and renting out the other half?
Yes, sir.
Okay. No other questions? Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much.
Anybody else who'd like to speak in favor? Anybody like to speak in opposition? Excellent. We'll close the public portion on that item. And come to our last one. This one is Charles and Benita Coalfield to rezone from R3 to C1, 2.82 acres at 618 Veterans Drive, the old VFW building, I think it is.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yes, that's correct. This is the former VFW building, and this request, of course, initially looking at R3 to neighborhood commercial. Anytime you're going from residential to commercial, we always take a very, very close look at that, particularly in the case of this subject property, which is not adjacent to any currently commercially zoned property. So we take a look at the zoning in the area. You'll see it's well within the R3 zone district. And of course, that was the zone district of the previous agenda item. So similar scenario, site-built, medium-density residential environment. And we look just south of the subject property. In fact, one or two properties south, you'll see that pink color, the neighborhood commercial. So we can see at the crossroads there is an established neighborhood commercial zone district. And when we look here from the aerial perspective, you'll see development lining up very much so with zoning. And just to the south of the subject property being developed for a church, and they're associated, I think they have some ball fields there, or some, at least a field adjacent to the church and their parking area. While they are a church and non-residential use, they are within the special use of the R3 zone district. Just wanted to make a point of that to the south, that church is non-residential. Closer look at the subject property, you'll see here, of course, it has been developed for quite a number of years, and it is developed with a commercial property, or a commercial building, I should say, and quite a large amount of parking. So in terms of neighborhood commercial uses, neighborhood commercial as a zone district is a fairly limited commercial zone district. It's intended to provide neighborhood-style convenience uses. So you can have certain restaurant-type uses, a grocery store, those types of things, small offices. And but you know, of course, the larger, more intensive things are not permitted in this zone district. So in terms of this property is able to accommodate this use, realistically, as it's currently zoned, there's no viable use for this property unless it's raised and entirely redeveloped. So this provides a reasonable use for the subject property as it exists with only renovation needed. Looking at the future development map, this is in the town neighborhood revitalization character area, and this is an area in order to promote investment in areas, particularly in areas where we have aging buildings. I think this fits that perfectly. And of course, being in the town neighborhood area, creating a neighborhood commercial zone in this area in a building that has existed for a number of decades is not introducing a new issue or new character to the area. We don't see it's going to cause any harm to the area, and the fact that it's been there for so long and that there are a number of limitations for neighborhood commercial. And just to point out, there wouldn't be able to be any alcohol sales on this property due to the adjacent church, so that removes that from the equation. And of course, the petitioner, I believe, is proposing to use this for a bakery. But the petitioner can answer to that in greater detail momentarily. But that would be a permitted use within that zone district. I'm happy to answer any questions. The staff recommendation is to approve as requested.
There's a large amount of parking to the south. Could he subdivide the property? Is there a potential for that?
Sure.
There's the potential for it. That would require quite a bit of site redevelopment.
Anything else? Octavio?
No.
All right, thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Okay, Charles and Benita Coalfield. Tom?
Mr. Chairman.
Good evening. My name is Tom Miner. I'm here on behalf of the Cofields. And I'll just try to provide a little bit of more interesting color around this particular building. If you did read the paper over the last weekend, there was a nice article on the front page that Charles Oliver had on this building. But this was a building that was created in 1951. The name of the entity was the George Edward Smith Memorial, Inc., who purchased the building, or who built the building at that time. And it was named after the first casualty that a Whitfield Countyan suffered in World War II, Mr. George Edward Smith. So the property was owned by George Edward Smith Memorial, Inc. They later merged with the VFW Post 4985, Inc., which is an affiliated entity with the Congressionally Chartered Veterans of Foreign Wars. So they became a charter under that national entity. They lost their membership through the years. They got down to 5 members. They couldn't pay their national dues, so they closed the Post. So the Post closed, and the national organization sold it to the Cofields a little more than a year ago. So I had the opportunity to spend a lot of time talking to the people at the VFW trying to clear the title to this property. And their records indicate that this has been used as a post for about 75 years. So that would be before zoning was enacted within the city. So it's been used for that purpose all this time. As Ethan mentioned, this is to be used as a bakery. Mr. Jorge Lara owns a bakery now at 1702 East Morris Street that many of you probably know. He intends to put another bakery like that here. This property has a real challenge as far as its use. Obviously, you can't have alcohol sales right next to the church. Although it is a commercial use, it's next to special uses that have a semi-commercial purpose, the church and the empty field below it. So we think this is an excellent use for the property. Honestly, as Ethan said, you just have to scrape everything probably if we can't get this use in there. So we think it's a great use for this particular track. It's a challenging track. It's too bad that the VFW had to close down, but given those facts, we think this is a great use of it. Mr. Lara's here if you have any questions about his business or his operation. It's a very nice building. He's built a very nice building over there on Morris Street, and we'll do the same here. Can I answer any questions?
None?
Not any.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anybody else would like to speak in favor? Anybody like to speak in opposition?
I have one question, just one.
Name and address, please.
Vicki Alt, Cohutta, Georgia, Cohutta Beaverdale Road. I've got the form filled out. I just have one question. We're not going to see a Dollar General here, right? And we can prevent that. You can prevent that. I'm happy with the bakery, but everywhere we look, we're seeing Dollar Generals. And we're done with those. We don't want any more. So that's my only problem.
Thank you. Get that C1. Dollar General and C1.
You can ask Ethan.
Well, we can get that second time. All right, anybody else who'd like to, or you'd like to speak to that, Mr. Minor? Do you know?
I really probably don't have any comment back to that. Mr. and Ms. Cofield aren't here, so I can't really respond to that question.
Okay, all right, thank you. All right, there's no further discussion. We'll close the public portion on that issue. And that is the last one we have tonight that we will deal with in open meeting. We will now go into closed meeting. Those of you, you can listen in, but you cannot partake or speak to what we're talking about. But you're welcome to stay. All right, Ethan, you want to lead us in on the tutors here?
Do a quick recap. You may
It's not
recall
on
the Tiny Tutors development coming for us last month, which was a request to rezone the property from R2 to GA. specifically to develop a campground, which would consist primarily of these tiny home-style Tudor homes, as well with some RV spaces on the lower side of that property off of Reed Road. We heard opposition. Of course, staff analysis was a recommendation to approve with several conditions that included fence and border around the periphery of the subject property, as well as a requirement for a minimum amount of green space on the property, a limitation in number of lots for RVs, and there were several conditions there. So the staff analysis did recommend approval. During the remarks, we did hear some opposition. Some of that was in terms for trespassing. Some of it was due to survey discrepancies. And so last month, the recommendation from the Planning Commission was in order to postpone or table the decision until a survey could be completed in order to settle those discrepancies and determine whether or not there were issues in the property boundary. The petitioner did follow through, complete that survey. In fact, they not only had what they assumed was their property line, they, I believe, also increased by an additional acre. So they were conservative in their original plan. So their survey came out to their benefit. Therefore, there were no issues in terms of discrepancies with the neighbors as were mentioned during the public hearing. So the petitioner has satisfied the requirement set forth by the Planning Commission. So now the rezoning, which we can see here, a quick recap on, is up for decision for recommendation. I'm happy to answer any questions. One thing I would say was that in the motion, if the rezoning is to be approved, it'd be very important just to simply note the staff analysis with conditions so that those conditions would be applied to the rezoning. It's critical that those conditions are made part of the rezoning.
Will you remind us what those conditions were? I mean, it's been a minute.
Those conditions were to create the fence, make sure that there's a fence around the boundary of the property. There was a limitation on the overall number of RV areas that they could place there. And the condition also required a buffer and a minimum amount of green space on the property. I believe we set somewhere along the tune of 40%, which of course the petitioner was more than in compliance with an agreement with, because the majority of this property they want to remain in green space.
We had the survey done.
Yes, survey has been completed. Staff have confirmed that, and the issues that were raised as part of the survey were settled by that dispute.
So no more discrepancies on property lines and.
No.
Anybody make a motion?
We make a motion on the property right now? Do we need to hear from anybody else?
No,
We already had the public hearing, so we were just doing a recap.
Motion that we approve, subject to the conditions recommended by the staff.
Second.
Jody seconds. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Unanimous. Okay. You good, Ethan? Okay. Now we're back to, the first item on the agenda tonight was to hear the recommendation of Casey Perry. This was on Dantzler Circle. Any comments, review?
Motion to approve. Yep.
David makes motion, Eric seconds. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, the ayes have it unanimously. David, Eric. Next one is to hear the recommendation. This is the second one in the county for Gary Whaley to rezone from GA to R5, 3767 Mount Pleasant Road. That one is splitting up.
For the build duplex. I move to be approved with conditions.
Okay, Octavio makes a motion to approve with conditions. Is there a second?
I don't think there, were there
Wait a minute, I
any other
think-
conditions on that one? I don't think there were conditions on
They're
that one. On
Which one's that?
Gary Whaley?
Yeah, they requit.
That's a different one.
Uh,
Pratt?
Yeah, this one.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay,
No conditions.
no conditions on this one. This is one with splitting up the land.
Eat off property.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
probably.
So again, make a motion.
Motion stays.
Octavio makes a motion, and
Second.
Jody seconds. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, the ayes have it unanimously. Now we go to the third one we heard tonight in the city of Dalton at 1425 Jones Street, and that is to take a mobile home and make it into a duplex, not make it into, but
That's the one
Build,
with the conditions. Yeah.
that's the one with conditions.
I make a motion that we approve, including the conditions.
Okay,
Second.
Octavio seconds. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? The ayes have it. And the last item we heard tonight, the VFW, the Cofields. Now that one,
Ethan, what would a Dollar General need to be zoned? What was, I mean, a Dollar General wouldn't go in there, would it?
You need C2 for that.
Okay.
so at C1, they could not move in. Okay. Were there any other restrictions on that one? I don't think there
No,
were.
that was just a straightforward.
Make a motion to approve. Second.
Octavio seconds. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? The ayes have it unanimously. And that closes all the requests we have tonight.
I'm gonna cook dinner for my family.
Now.
It's outta here.
I done spoke too soon. Here he comes.
Easy peasy.
Right, I told my family they were on their own for dinner, so I'm gonna have to come up with, you know, make me something.
This is the Grove subdivision off Cleveland Highway.
Question, do you have the plans from the campsite?
We have the site plan that was.
No, I mean the survey.
Screen.
The survey was the last page. Ethan, can you go back to,
Did we have it?
right there's the, right there's the survey.
And this is the updated
Yes.
survey.
Okay.
So he actually gained an acre when he located his property boundaries. Right now, if there's any disputes, it would be a civil matter, their registered land surveyor versus whoever, any of the adjacent homeowners hire.
All right,
So they actually.
that worked
ended
out
up
well
with-
for him.
They actually ended up with an additional acre more than what they had once they had the property surveyed.
Okay. Did the original survey, they accepting that second one? You don't know?
Do not know. So
Okay.
the homeowner.
But again, that's civil.
Yes.
Yeah.
Property line disputes, they have a survey now that's stamped and recorded, so they're welcome to hire their own surveyor to dispute that in court,
I
but
win.
that falls outside our bounds of authority, so.
Other than fencing, it,
That's a great
you know, they're not gonna come close to boundary lines.
No,
They shouldn't.
the area in question, the developer did say that he had no intent in using the area
Yeah.
anyway, so it was too small to really do anything.
Yeah, unless he, again, unless he puts a fence through there.
Correct.
Yeah, that, then you get to an agreement. Okay,
So
So
this
what
is
are we doing
the-
here?
This is a subdivision that was approved last summer by this board, the preliminary plat. It's the Grove, it's just south of the Robinson Salvage Development.
Yeah.
If you're familiar with that open area, originally I think it was supposed to develop for some mini warehouses or some type of climate storage. The only change between the plat that you approved and this one now are the 6 lots highlighted in red in the top right-hand corner of the page. Previously, there were 2 cul-de-sacs coming off of the proposed road to connect to those. Now they're intending on developing those off of the existing subdivision. The reason why that's coming back to this board is they were no longer included in that rezoning, so those lots will be R2 as opposed to R4, which will come with stronger restrictions that the developer is aware of. But again, it did change the layout and affected some of the zoning, so it does have to be reapproved by this board.
I'll move.
So we're just changing,
I'm sorry?
Is it 7,500 square feet?
1,200 square feet for.
No, I'm talking about the lot
Lots.
size.
Lot
75.
size, if it's on sewer, it's 15,000 square feet.
I was just like, some of these are.
These are all 8s, 9s, 7s, right?
The ones
so I was
north,
I was thinking these three weren't conforming to R2.
they're not, but they're lots of record.
Okay.
Meaning they're using the area that was previously subdivided by Miller Road, so.
So on, but all on these other ones here.
The other ones were previously approved, we are having to reapprove those, but those did not change, from the previous plat approval that I think was last August. It was last summer, I don't know the exact date. But to your point, David, if you want to go ahead and make a motion to approve those, for the smaller than the 15,000 square feet, we can add that in, just as an extra layer of protection.
These have sewer, right?
Yes, they have to.
Oh, so it's something over here that is below the 15.
So lot 16 in the cul-de-sac and lot 82 and 83.
Yeah, I mean, 16 and 83 are probably not gonna be a problem. I was just looking at that
82.
lot 82.
Lot 82, our minimum lot size on sewer for most residential areas is 7,500 square feet, so it's larger than that.
But they're gonna be beholden to R2.
They're gonna have to do R2 as far as the minimum gross floor area, as well as the setbacks are a little bit more stringent in the R2, so.
So they may not be able to build there.
They may not, their engineer is here if you have any questions, if you think you can't.
It's just south of the Robinson Salvage Shopping Center.
Come on up here.
Yeah, you just come on up.
I got, oh, yeah.
The formalities over.
Seems a little less.
But you're familiar, like especially this one right here?
We're just wondering, I mean, y'all don't have an issue with,
No, our client doesn't.
okay.
They actually, we did this change at their request.
Right.
When they saw that they could, before we, like Jake said, we had roads coming off that circle road to the south. This is all to them about cutting costs on new roadway and utilizing what's already there, so.
Now, which subdivision is this coming from?
That's Miller Grove.
That's Miller Grove up there.
I don't know the formal name of that.
It's Miller Grove, it's behind the assisted living.
Oh, yeah.
And the tractor supply.
Yeah.
But those particular plots right there are part of
Part of the grove.
They're part of the Grove
Part of the
subdivision,
Grove up there,
but the
yeah.
access will be off of Miller Grove.
Okay.
And I don't believe there's an active HOA in that subdivision. So the only standards that they would have to be followed would be what we placed on them.
Okay. Y'all follow that?
Yep.
So it's really not gonna be in the middle of the subdivision, but it's gonna be the same developers, basically. Okay.
Motion to approve is presented.
Second.
Octavio seconds. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? The ayes have it.
If you want to pass those down, I'll start.
Are you gonna start again?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Cody.
Sit in on easy today.
Alright, and this one is going to be for the creation of a flag lot. This is Mr. Alan Ledford. He originally cut out a small section of land for his daughter. You'll see that in the rectangle, kind of bottom right-hand side of the page. And she has since sold that property, leaving him with a lot that doesn't have road frontage. So this creates an already legally established 100-foot ingress egress easement onto Lower Kingsbridge Road. And it in sense creates a flag lot for his large piece of area in the back that he would like to sell, build a house on, do something with, but they cannot without this flag lot being approved.
But he owns the ingress.
He does.
Now, those 30 acres, since they don't have, okay.
Their only access would be to Lower Kingsbridge Road, but that 100 feet is a ingress egress easement for this property owner right here. And that was recorded in their deed, so they can never block that ingress egress easement, but he can also never do anything with the property in the back without having that road frontage.
Now, that road frontage will allow him in the future to subdivide if he wants to, right?
No. Once, you have to have at least 50 feet of road frontage in Whitfield County to subdivide,
And
but
that's-
that easement must remain 100 feet
Okay,
for the deed, so he couldn't really subdivide unless he found some other access back to Lower Kingsbridge Road.
okay.
Or if it was for family, he could split it up to 5 times for family members.
Not to be nitpicky, but that 112 feet right there on the diagonal,
No, because that's what he said, that's an easement.
yeah, but is that 112, is this 101 on the perpendicular?
It's
Or
100
does it
feet.
matter? It's 100
So
feet.
that-
It is 100 feet. I measured it out on the perpendicular.
Okay, we think alike.
The 100 feet is.
So
Okay.
my question is still that, so he cannot subdivide it unless for members of the family.
He could for family members
Yeah,
with the family easement exemption, but not for lots to sell.
Okay.
The 100-foot is recorded on the farm's deed, so regardless of what he does with the property, he has to allow them 100 foot of ingress egress.
I move to be approved.
Teddy moves approval. Jody seconds. All in favor, say aye. All opposed? The ayes have it unanimously.
Thank you, sir.
And that's it.
That's it.
Really?
I mean, that's like record time.
That is.
This. They planned on it.
Wow.
We didn't expand any more than the general dollar.
I got questions.
Let me stop the string.
Okay.
Everything over there, I
Yes,
know
please.
who owns the property on the north end.